So what I heard from you is that like it's this kind of like evolution of the Dharma is something that has to happen all the way up and down the stack. It has to happen at a
Yes.
basic survival level, at
Yeah.
a sort of like creation of institutions, creation of culture,
Art,
and
music,
art,
everything.
music, like intellectual
Yeah.
exploration, cultural
Yeah.
exploration. And so up and down the stack, there's and the similarities that I see between the two spaces are a rejection of the status quo for
Right.
culture, organizations, art,
Right.
economics,
Yes.
and intellectual environment. And then there's this question of, well, what's next? I just rejected the main way that people do this. What is the way
Yeah.
that I am exploring this design space? And I think that it's good
Yes.
to acknowledge that we, maybe are still evolving our exploration of what is good up and down the stack. And I think that the opportunity that I see in the Ethereum ecosystem is taking thousands of software engineers and getting them to work on public goods and open source instead of their corporate job at like JP Morgan or
Right.
whatever. And
Right.
so
Right.
maybe there's a parallel opportunity here where, there's a subset of people who really love the Dharma and creating culture and art and experience for it, but their means don't allow them to spend 80% of their time on it as opposed to 20% of their time, and creating sort of a Schelling point where you're pulling more people into living that as the majority of their day instead of the minority of the day is
Hmm.
perhaps where I see an opportunity. But I have to acknowledge
Yeah.
that as we explore up and down the stack, there will be many, many failed experiments along the way as we try to figure that out, because it's easier to find that something doesn't work, that something is new. And accelerating that evolution and that iteration, I think,
Hmm.
is the great opportunity that is in my mind's eye right now.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. As you're sharing on that, Kevin, I'm thinking too about things that would be possible there that aren't possible now. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
the whole question of lineage in the Buddhist world, like
Mm,
who is authorized to teach or to do
yeah,
what. This is a
yeah.
huge question, and I'm kind of in a lineage. I'm in two lineages, one of whom has this
Mm-hmm.
very clear and public lineage that you can trace and see the public history of. The other one is contentious,
Yeah.
and this is always happens. What if we could use, like, you could use an NFT or a token that's on a blockchain to represent lineage.
Mm-hmm.
You
The
could see.
legitimacy to teach in a certain tradition is
Yeah,
something that you
right.
need to track the provenance of, and not through
Yeah,
word of mouth.
you've
Yeah.
unlocked your insight meditation. You're a cheat teacher badge.
Yeah.
Here it is on the blockchain. Like, there's something there around the transparency or background, like making explicit what is often a very implicit and challenging kind of conversation around lineage. Also, finances, making things transparent,
Mm-hmm.
more open, more easily, I think would be a huge opportunity for Dharmic
Mm-hmm.
organizations, and
Yeah.
making their governance open and transparent. Like, you can see what choices have been made, who's saying what, instead of it being something that happens behind closed doors. I see these technologies as inherently kind of incentivizing that more openness and transparency. So that,
Yeah.
to me, that's only good when it comes to Buddhism.
Right.
Yeah.
I really like it. Am interested to dive in on this point with you, because as you were talking, I'm just a very visual person, and I googled Buddhist lineage, just to
Oh
get sort of
gosh,
a
look at that.
visual of some of the forks or people's interpretations of what the forks are over time. And I'm not endorsing any of these ones that I just pulled up and I'm sharing my screen with you, but I will call
Right.
out that the forking of open source software in many
Yes.
ways
Nice.
resembles visually the Buddhist the forkability of the Dharma, as various
Yes.
practitioners have created their own views of it. And the last thing that it reminds me of is the idea of this tree of life,
Right.
with natural selection, in which we're just kind of like infinitely forking
Yes.
evolution over time. And there's just so much biomimicry, I think, in both of these things, when you really bake forkability
Yes.
and selection into each of them. And so there's something
Yes.
deep and powerful that I cannot put I cannot bring to words
Yes.
in these metaphors.
I think it's beautiful, and I think it's one of the main things that are missing right now in the current contemporary Buddhist ecology is there's a lot more closedness
Ooh.
between organizations and communities and people. Like they're not open channels.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think so. Maybe introducing the idea of a rage quit functionality or a fork into Buddhist communities could create
Yeah,
more open experimentation.
because traditionally in Buddhism, a fork is considered a very bad thing. Like
Right.
if you fork with the tradition, you're going to end up in some bad
Yeah.
situation. But to me, like what you're saying, the fork ability
It's cheap. It's
provides
cheaper.
freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And you don't have to like implode. Your community doesn't have to implode and spend 10 years, with everyone fighting for power. You could just
Yeah. Like,
go do your
no,
thing.
it's cool. We forked. Like they live their lives. We live our lives. We're going to govern it this way. We're going to
Yeah.
teach this specific idea.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is that when you reduce the cost to fork, you enable more novel experimentation of the
Yes.
design space. And by the way, the design space is huge because Dharma is this massively important thing that has been passed down for generations, and it's now entering this digital age in which things are upside down and Facebook owns everything, and we're not sure how we relate to each other online. And so the opportunities for exploration in this design space are huge. If we just choose to do it, we spend our time on it, and we can explore it fast enough that it actually becomes impactful for enough people.
Yeah. Yep.